Hey, everybody. It is day 3 of the Achieving Inclusion Summit. And my name is Tracy Brown. I want to welcome you to day 3 and to just remind you that all of the sessions, although they were streaming live at the time they were scheduled, are available to you on all 3 platforms: Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. So you can go to the same links and you can scroll down and find any of the sessions that you have missed. It's been a really, really full 2 days, and we still have today to go. So the rundown for today includes a session this morning with Dr. Christopher Metzler. And if you are not familiar with the impact that this man has had on diversity and inclusion initiatives, you do not want to miss this session. If you are aware of the impact that he has had on creating standards and encouraging organizations to take DEI seriously, then you already are planning to be with us. We'll also be doing a session today with Sima Lieberman, who is also known as the Inclusionist, but we'll be talking with her about her podcast, Everyday Conversations on Race with Everyday People, and some of the guests she has had and some of the insights that have come from talking to everyday people and some pretty special people as well. And I'll be providing some tips around bringing more fun into your initiatives in just a couple of minutes. And then later in the day, talking about real life challenges. So if you have a real life challenge that you'd like me to speak about, get an email in the next couple of hours to staff@tracybrown.com. Staff, STAFF, at tracybrown.com, and we'll try to address that. But I do have some suggestions or some real life situations that other people have sent me, and I'll be talking about those and giving you some ideas. So I'm happy to put yours in to the list if we get it in the next couple of hours, like in the morning before noon Central Time. Let's see, what else are we going to do? Then I'll also be back at the end of the day just with some comments about the summit overall and the feedback that we've been receiving, and provide you some additional resources. I hope that you have already gotten some value, and if you have and you want to put that in the comments or in the chat, like what has been meaningful so far for you, or which of the guests that I've been talking with, which one or ones of them really had an impact for you, and what tips have you gotten that you can put into place in your organization, especially within the framework of the 3 tracks that we have chosen to focus on during this summit: avoiding fatigue, confronting racism, and measuring progress. So much of the focus on measuring progress has been focused on or directed to thinking about what you do up front that will help you measure progress. Whereas often I find I'm in conversations with people who want to talk about measuring progress or measuring success on the back end, but they didn't up front put in the right elements or have the communication that was required, so they would literally have metrics later. And so most of the focus for measuring progress has been on thinking about what you want to measure up front. So I'm not going to assume that you already have all the information you need to tap in for the rest of the day. And so we're going to go into some tips. Yes. So integrating fun into your DEIB strategy or the initiatives that you're doing. And I'm laughing a little bit because fun is relative, right? I think we can agree with about that what might be fun for me might not be fun for you. So I just sat down and made a list of different things that I have seen implemented or that I have been a part of implementing in a wide variety of organizations. And the idea of fun for this list was just, what are some things that might seem a little out of the box in terms of getting employees in an organization or members of an association to begin to engage around inclusion, in addition to some of the standard things like, having a class or sending people to participate in a webinar. So what are some different kinds of things? And hopefully you'll hear this list and you'll go, oh yeah, we did that. Or, oh, that would work really well in my department. So it's just a list of things for you to think about that might add a little fun. And they're not really in any order. I'll be skipping around a little bit, but just listen up. And if you have suggestions of things you've done that are fun, feel free to add those into the comments or the chat, or send me an email at staff@tracybrown.com, and we'll add your examples to the next list. So let's start with some ideas that begin with the letter C. So a number of organizations I've worked with have used community service as a way to reinforce the commitment to inclusion. They've used it to create more collaboration within the workforce, or collaboration between different ERGs, to decide on some project in the community that represents the organization and connects to the commitment to inclusion. And so they would end up having um, wins, big wins on 3 or 4 different metrics. But community service, how could you use that and weave that in? Another C word is conferences. One organization that I worked with for 4 or 5 years on their strategy, we actually selected 4 conferences that we thought would be really important for people to go to. And it was used kind of as a reward for people who were volunteering on diversity advisory teams in the different locations. And they would be able to go and travel and meet people from all over the country or from the state, depending on which conference it was. And they had fun doing it. Now, we did put some structure with it. Like, yes, we're sending you to this conference, and there were some expectations. But for them, it was so much fun because they were doing diversity and inclusion focused work, but it was in a completely different environment, and they loved it. So another C word is collaborations. And I mentioned that with community service, but not just in community service. So one organization I worked with, as part of their ERGs, they said, we will fund an activity that's educational, but it must be a collaboration among 3 ERGs or more, but the ideal number was 3. And so they would have to get together and come up with, instead of competing, they would collaborate on what topic or what speaker do we want to bring in that can link the commitment to inclusion to who we are as an organization, or to some vision or goal that we have. And they had fun planning it. They got skills while they were doing it: event planning skills, marketing skills, representing the organization throughout the organization. But it was really fun for them, for the people who planned to do it. Let's go to film. And I'm going to combine film and theater. So, a lot of times in training, it's easy to refer to a film that was in general release that many people have seen, or if it's a film that has come out more recently, to in advance, 3 weeks in advance, suggest that people watch this film through a streaming service, or some method of being able to watch the film in advance and use the characters in the film to teach a lesson. I've also used film or theater as not just in training, but to really tell a story and then have that linked to the strategy for that organization. And so, again, that doesn't work if you are doing something for the whole organization. But either one or both of those works well if you're going to do a all day or multi-day retreat, for example, or if you are working with the Diversity Council or the Inclusion Advisory Council, and you have a set number of people that is not, you can get 12 or 25 or even 50 people to watch the same thing. But if you're talking about 5,000 people, that won't work so well. But people love it because they can see, right? We can see what's going on with other people often more easily than we can notice it in ourselves, but they can see patterns in the organizations or in the decisions that are being made, as well as in conversations. So, film and theater. I am working with an organization now that is looking into having some film showings, like, renting out a theater and making it available to 200 people to come and watch a film together and then stay for an hour and have conversation about it. And obviously they have a very large group of members. This is an association. They have a very large group of members, and so to invite a couple hundred people to go have this experience together is possible. And we're working on making that happen right now. Go to the zoo. Now, when I first heard this idea, it came up from a member of an inclusion council that I was working with. And they said, you know what? Before our meeting next month, we should all go to the zoo. And everybody went, go to the zoo? Why would we do that? And the person went on to say, in fact, we should meet at the zoo because I think they have an area where we could actually have our meeting there. But we need to go on a field trip to the zoo because we grew up loving the zoo, or children love the zoo, and there are all these different kinds of animals. And it turned out to be a fabulous day at the zoo. Not quite the full day, but all morning. And then they had their meeting on the property. And, by 1:30, 2 o'clock, everybody was back, going back to their regular work assignment. But what happened was going to the zoo together. They were together much of the time, but not the whole time. So at one point they were together and they were talking about and seeing different animals and then bringing that to the workplace. What's it like? We have different kinds of people. The zoo has different kinds of animals. I mean, you can make up what that story was. But then they also divided into teams and did a scavenger hunt linked to their industry and their priorities. And so they had different animals that they needed to find that would represent core qualities and core values and different stakeholder groups, and then meet back and share. And it was amazing because we had the richest conversation during the meeting about what is diversity, what is inclusion, how can it work for you, and when can it be a problem. And people were opened up to say things that they had not said prior to that, because they were relating it to the animals in the zoo, the habitats in the zoo, the terrain in the zoo, the weather that day, and how it affected the way that some of the animals reacted. It was an amazing experience. And it was totally out of the box. And most people had fun. Even the people who didn't have fun said, well, I like that it was something different I never would have thought of. All right, let me give you 5 or 6 more. Often people will say, oh, let's make it fun. Everybody, bring food, or we'll do cultural celebrations that are around food, or maybe festivals, but food. And I don't really have any problem with that, as long as it's not overdone, and as long as we don't pretend that by sharing food that we are really learning how to understand, communicate, engage with, or serve people who are different from us. But it can be a great conversation opener. So instead of food, I'm going to say, think about the kitchen. Food is one part of the kitchen. And another way to connect food and kitchen would be, instead of actually serving the food, collect recipes and tell the story about the recipes. I think I've had 4 different clients that have created cookbooks from having people bring in their favorite family recipe, right? Or from just collecting from the employees themselves their favorite recipes. Or one client did recipes related to holidays. And so there were holidays that got highlighted that a lot of people did not even know about. So you can use food, just don't get caught in the rut of, oh, we're going to have Mexican food on Cinco de Mayo, or gospel or soul food in February because it's Black History Month. Like, that is not very creative. It can still be fun, just don't overdo it. Another piece of relates to the kitchen. Um, appliances. There's all kinds of things you can do related to appliances. Like, what appliances or kitchen tools do you use in the process of baking a cake, or making biscuits, or um, ingredients for mac and cheese? You'd be amazed that people are like, what? You do that? How? I didn't know. And the conversation then goes beyond that. But with appliances, how you use them, did you have them growing up? Did you have the same appliances growing up that you have now? What's different about that? Yeah, there are things you can do with that. That can be really fun. I want to give you at least 3 or 4 more. Games is an easy one. Make games, and you can have mental games like puzzles or quizzes. You can have physical games. A client I worked with last year actually had a field day, and they had employees playing, like bringing the physical games that they learned when they were growing up. And because that particular employer had employees who had been raised not only all over the United States, but they had several employees who were born and raised and lived outside of the US. And so people were exposed to different games. Plus, just how silly is it for people who are in their 40s and 50s and 60s trying to play the games they played when they were 5th grade, or 12 or 4, and realizing they had to make some modifications. Let's just leave it at that. So, but games can be good. They can be puzzles. They can be mental games. They can be anything that you can come up with, as long as you don't overdo the competition. You can have some good, healthy competition, but don't overdo that. Remember that the reason you're playing the game somehow links to diversity and inclusion and creating an environment of belonging. So I'm taking a deep breath. This one that I'm going to mention next, I get more mixed messages than anything else, but I would say 70% ish people find it fun. So the fun idea is to use or integrate dance. Some of you are like, no, I can't dance, or oh, I hate to dance in public. So that happens, and it's how you use it. So you can, I've worked with an association that actually had a talent show, and it was dance only. So you had to bring some kind of talent and you had to wrap it around dance. And it was so much fun because people came up with things I never would have expected. And sometimes it was, cultural dances from their ethnic or culture or national origin. Sometimes it was just silliness. We're going to make up something. We're going to do interpretive dance, Martha Graham style. But it led into some great conversations. Another client that I worked with a few years ago used a dance where a, they had people teaching dances from different cultures. And so it was educational, but in the course of learning the dance, they were also learning things about the culture. And this happened to be one of my healthcare clients. And so the teaching the dance, they were weaving in things about the culture and what the dance meant. And then they would be talking about patient care and cultural norms and how it impacted folks that you might be providing care for. So it was integrated really beautifully. And then some of you know that one of my favorite things to do is when I know people really don't, there are a lot of people who really don't like to dance or think they can't dance. They've been told they can't dance. And so I will be like, we're going to dance for 30 seconds. 30 seconds. And I'll pull out my 30-second dance party button.
30-second dance party.
And almost anybody can get through 30 seconds, especially if we make it fun and silly, and then use that as a segue into something else. I've used that as a segue into talking about gender roles because often, if I say we're going to dance together, often, not always, the majority of people who don't want to do it are men. And again, not always, but often. And also when we watch each other dance, then I've segued it into a conversation about, what kind of dances do you like, and where'd you get that move from, and is there any significance, and did you like the music or did you not like the music, and end up in a conversation about the diversity of the people who are in that workshop or on that webinar. And the key is this. The key is, don't assume that what's fun for you is fun for others. The key is, try something that seems completely silly, as long as you are able to link it into the conversation about diversity or inclusion or belonging or acceptance. And then my biggest tip for you, if you don't have a dozen ideas of how to make it fun, then ask. Ask the people in your department or your organization or in your association. Ask people what would be a fun way to explore DEI? What would be a fun way to learn more about each other's culture, or a fun way to understand our patients better? What would be fun? And ask the folks who you want to participate. And you may get 25 ideas, but whatever you choose, and you can confidently say, we're implementing Maria's idea, right? We're implementing this idea that came from Kayla. We're implementing, or we're going to, at this next meeting, I hope that you all had fun. Like, when after you've seen they've had a really good time, and then you use that to recognize that that idea came from the group itself. And if you do that, you're actually modeling valuing diversity and utilizing the diversity of the group in order to demonstrate or manifest inclusion. So I hope you got a couple of ideas. That's just a short list. And if you need more suggestions, do not hesitate to reach out to me. That's just the tip of the iceberg. Some of those ideas were generated by me, and some of them were ideas of things that I have experienced working with clients all over the United States. And I'd love to work with you and for you as well if it's helpful. So those are the tips for this morning. Some fun ways, or some ways to bring fun into your diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging initiatives. My name is Tracy Brown. I'm going to stop now because I need to take a breath before talking with Dr. Christopher Metzler, and that is coming up in just a few minutes. Hope to see you throughout the rest of the day right here as part of the Achieving Inclusion Summit.